All right, all right. Hello and welcome to today's session. We're going to be talking all about how to get more at-need calls fast by winning with local service ads, which is currently referred to as Google Guaranteed. Now, I'll be referring to this also as the LSAs throughout the webinar. This Google program is something that's relatively established now, but there was a period where it was brand new. That's not the case anymore, but as I speak to more and more funeral homes around the country, I realize that they still don't really know that this exists. So this is really what I'm most excited about at this moment. Now, as someone who's been in the digital marketing space for over 10 years now, I've noticed that opportunities come in waves, right? And you need to ride them in order to take advantage of them. And this is one of those waves. Now, eventually, it's going to become saturated. It'll be more expensive. It'll also be harder to get seen using local service ads. However, there are still plenty of markets where you can just sign up today and you will pop up at the top of Google, and you'll only be paying somewhere between $20 to $30 per call. And I'll explain a little bit more about that as the webinar progresses. Now, I'm not going to dive into step by step on how to set this all up. And I'm not going to do that because, one, this is something that's always changing, right? I feel that the best way to do that would be to have a workshop. So if anyone who's watching this is interested in having a workshop on how to set this up, please, feel free to let me know. You can either visit my website or go ahead and email me at oscar@funeralmarketingpros.com, and we can set something up. So I will be talking a little bit more about why you should be participating in LSAs and how it should fit into your overall internet marketing strategy. But really, what I want to do is I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this. So for those of you who are already running these ads, it's going to be important for you to know what are those small changes? What's that 1% change or adjustment or modification that you can make that will bring you more leads and get you to book more calls and services, right? So local service ads. Local service ads is part of the overall accelerated growth model. And we're always thinking about how we can help you accelerate the growth of your funeral home and generate more leads, book more services, make more revenue, and really accelerate that growth. And really what it boils down to is three things. Number one, we have to drive leads, right? Number two, we have to maximize conversions. And then we've got to optimize our return on investment, right? So to drive leads, there's a lot of different things that we can do, but basically they fall into the bucket of three things: organic, paid, and database. Now, you might be asking, what does all that mean? Now, organic, I'll put it simply. Organic is simply coming up when someone Googles funeral home near me and they're able to find you towards the top of Google, but you're not paying for it, right? That's called organic. Now, paid means just that, right? It's paid. You're paying to show up when people search for a funeral home, a mortuary, a crematory, or cremation service. Now, this includes local service ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, anything that you're paying to show up, right? And then there's database marketing, and database is basically just marketing back to the existing customer base that you have, or the existing prospect base that you have, and making sure that they choose your funeral home or crematory again when the time comes that they need your service, and possibly introducing pre-need services to that group of people as well. Okay. So from there, we've got maximize conversion, right? And really what this means is that once someone's on your website, once they find out about you, they see your listing, they find out about you, will they actually contact you? What's that thing that makes them contact you? So if you're able to get them onto your website, you have to make sure that your website is built to convert. Once someone gets there, they're interested, you have what's called the call to action. You're telling them exactly what to do. And really what you want to do is you want to convert that lead flow at the highest level possible. Now, part of this is also reputation, right? Which is your reviews, what people are saying about you on Google, on Facebook, Better Business Bureau, basically all those public sites. If you have a better reputation, you're going to convert at a higher level. And now there's automation, right? And we really have found that in today's market, to accelerate growth, we can't just generate leads and follow up manually. We want to be able to use automation via your phone, SMS, email to make sure that we've got that speed to lead, to make sure that we're touching our prospects multiple times and make sure that we're communicating in the way that they want to communicate. Keep in mind that you can use automation to automatically send an SMS if you miss a call. So that could at least keep that person's interest for a few minutes until you can get back to them. And we should also keep in mind that we now have to have different forms of communication built into our systems. And that's because as Generation X and millennials become the decision makers for funerary services, some might prefer to engage with you via text. So it's important that you have that option available and that you make that available on your website. So ultimately, we need to optimize results, right? And sometimes we need to analyze just how much we're spending, right? So if your goal would be to add on, say, another million or to double your revenue over the next year, then you're going to have to spend more money to give yourself more of that fuel that you need to get there. So you're going to have to look at how much are you spending, what is your average cost per lead, and most importantly, what's your return on investment, and how can you make that better? So that's that. And what we're going to go into today is deeper into local service ads, which fits into driving leads, but driving leads through a paid mechanism. So in the beginning of these webinars, I always like to zoom out for a minute and look at the big picture before we zoom in and get into the micro detail of the key strategy that we're focused on for the day. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to ask you, you decided to be here. Your time's extremely valuable. It's the most valuable asset that you have, right? So I'm going to ask you for your attention. You know, if you have your cell phone on and you can afford to turn it off for now, please do. Any other social media tabs that might be open, please close them. And let's give this our undivided attention, because in this webinar, I promise that this is going to be quick, productive, and it's really going to give you clear actions and insights that you can take away that could absolutely revolutionize your funeral home. So I'll be talking about what local service ads are, where it's active, how it works, why you should be running them if you're not already. And then we're going to spend some time talking about how the rankings work, how you can optimize your results in local service ads to really capitalize on lead opportunities that exist within them. And just a little bit about myself. If you don't know, my name's Oscar Guerrero. I am the director over at Funeral Marketing Pros. I have over 10 years of hands-on experience in the digital marketing industry. Done everything from building websites to technical SEO to meta ads, email marketing. And I've helped hundreds of small to medium-sized businesses generate millions and millions of dollars. I am also a mentor for seven-figure agency, basically just helping smaller marketing agencies grow and become million-dollar businesses. And I think it's important to mention that this is what we do day in and day out at Funeral Marketing Pros, right? We believe in empowering funeral homes to secure their future and thrive in an ever-evolving industry. You know, through the use of cutting technology and strategic marketing, we help funeral homes protect their business, stay ahead of the competition, and adapt to the changing landscape. All right, folks, let's take a minute to talk about what's really going on in our industry now. I think that understanding this is really going to lead us into understanding why now is the perfect time to capitalize on local service ads. The truth is that we're in the middle of a perfect storm, and it's shaking up the funeral home business in ways that we've never seen before. First off, competition is getting fierce, right? We're going up against, big corporate direct cremation companies that are coming in very strong. Our competitors are stepping up their game. That adds pressure. And speaking of pressure, cremation rates are rocketing. So more and more families are opting for direct cremation, which means fewer people are choosing traditional services. And that's cutting into the core of what we've always done. Now let's talk about call volume, right? For most of the funeral homes that I've spoken with, call volume is down. It is way down. And people are seeing fewer calls, which naturally means that they're handling fewer services. And when they do get a call, the revenue per service just isn't what it used to be, especially since the market has shifted towards cremations. And on top of that, we're all feeling the squeeze from inflation. Costs are going up everywhere we turn, but our margins are getting thinner. And as revenue is dropping, it's putting our profitability at serious risk unless we really start to take some proactive steps. And then what about the COVID accelerated mortality impact, right? We saw a lot of deaths earlier than expected, which has led to a dip in call volume now. So we're in a bit of a lull, and it could be another 5 years before we see those numbers pick back up. And that might be a long time to wait. So in addition to all of that, I think that we've all noticed that consumer preferences are shifting, right? In some areas, we have up to 95% of families that are choosing the most basic, cost effective options. There's a green movement that's going on. It's gaining steam where people are turning away traditional casket services. The days of high cost $10,000 to $20,000 funerals, for most of the funeral homes that I speak with around the country, those opportunities are either gone or fading fast. And families are looking for lower costs and even home-based services. So this isn't a blip, folks. This is a major shift in how we've always done business. Now, we're navigating uncharted waters, right? Many funeral home directors, who've been in the industries for decades are facing challenges that they've never seen before. But here's the thing, with every challenge comes an opportunity, and we need to adapt, innovate, and find new ways to serve our community and get in front of the community as well. So, what are local service ads and how can they help? First, let's go over a few basics. There are over 1 million searches for funeral homes and cremation services per month, according to Google. All right. Now, well, what does this tell us? This tells us that there are a lot of at-need families that are turning to the internet for help, right? So just for a minute, I would ask you to put yourselves in their shoes. You know, someone has passed away. Think about the state of mind that they're in. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to turn to. They open Google and they type in funeral home near me. The next question we need to ask ourselves is, who are they going to call and why? So they're primarily, they're looking for two things: reputation and availability. That's what they're looking at this point. So how many funeral homes are they going to call? One, maybe two. So where do the funeral homes have to be on Google in order for those funeral homes to get the phone calls? They're going to have to be on page one. They're going to have to be all over that first page. So what you're seeing in front of you is traditionally what people would see when they would search for funeral home near me or funeral home in a specific city. Okay. Now, what Google has introduced to the market is what you're seeing here. This is what comes up at the very top. And what you see at the very top here in the shaded area, these are local service ads. Now, they also say Google screened or Google guaranteed. Do you notice the difference? You notice that the availability, the phone number, the reputation is all there, right there at the top. So who do you think is getting calls now from at-need families? So this is also why, whenever my approach to marketing for funeral homes, specifically for at-need families, when you want to raise call volume quickly, it really comes down to taking up as much real estate on the first page of Google that you can, right? The more places that you are on page one, the higher the probability of getting that at-need call. And what we found is you're still going to get a healthy amount of calls from the Google Maps, right? What you see there. Now, And I'm a big believer that we want to drive traffic that's both organically and paid, right? So don't be like, okay, this is just local service ads. They're at the top. That's all I need to think about right now. No, no, no. We still find that there is a very healthy quality of lead flow that's coming in both through the maps and through the organic results underneath those maps as well. Now, Google local services ads does give funeral homes, especially those who have not done the marketing, who have not worked on the tactics to get to the top of the maps in the past and to get to the top of the organic listings in the past, it gives them a great opportunity to actually start getting calls today. And this is what Google local services ads are, right? The main crux of what Google has shifted towards is putting a tracking number on those results, right? So when you see a Google local service ads with a call or a phone number there, that's a tracking number. And they're driving tracked phone calls. And you might ask yourself, well, why are they doing this? Why are they tracking? Tracking meaning they're recording your phone call, these phone calls. And they're doing this because now this is the most exciting part. They're doing this because you only have to pay for calls that you get, for qualified calls that you receive. So now they've recently added the opportunity to fill in a form, and you actually pay a little bit less for a form submission than you do for a phone call. But what we find with the clients we work with is that the lion's share of these opportunities come in from tracked phone calls directly through that Google local service ad. Now, with regular Google PPC, which is regular Google ads, the pay-per-click ads that you see that say sponsored, now you usually pay when someone clicks on the ad and they get to a page, regardless of whether or not they actually call you. So the difference here is you will only be charged if they call you. And this means that this poses very little risk to your marketing. Now, Google puts their stamp of approval on you because they're going to do some background checks on you as well. They want to make sure that you're legit, and they're going to guarantee, meaning if you were to drop the ball and screw up or have the client get upset, they might actually cover something for the client, or they may be compelled to do something for that client. So they're putting their name on the line to represent your organization. And it's really important, obviously, to them that they put a good quality funeral home with a good reputation that isn't going to upset a family, that they pair that person with a family. So you might be asking yourself, why does Google LSA warrant the attention? Well, based on recent statistics, 87% of customers use Google when they're looking for local services. This is going to include funeral homes. This is the number one place that they look, and local service ads are what's coming up at the very top, right? So yes, you've got organic results, you've got the pay-per-click results, but at the very top of that results, and this is both on desktop and on mobile, is the Google Guaranteed, or the LSA. And so if it's the number one place your customers are looking and it's the number one result that you can possibly attain, you obviously want to be in that rotation, right? Now, we want to be showing up for these results. We want to be capitalizing on that particular opportunity. And so we've got a plan to win, right? And at this point, this is active in all markets that I know of. So there's some funeral homes that know about it, but not all of them do. But even if more start to use it, there are ways to win in local service ads. And it's not just as easy as saying, hey, I'm going to pay $30 per lead to come up number one in Google Guaranteed or in the local service ads. And if that would be the case, we'd all rank and everything would be great. But that won't be the case, right? There's more that goes into this. And so kudos for you who are watching this video, who are attending this webinar. Kudos for you for being on here to learn what are the nuances that you need in order to give yourself a fighting chance to be in that rotation. So here's how it works. And for those of you that have already done this, bear with me, please. But for those of you that haven't, it's good to know the first steps, right? So we've got to complete the local service ads application process. They're gonna have they're gonna ask you for your funeral home license, your funeral director or embalmer's license, and you're gonna have to have your driver's license on you as well. And they will run a background check on you and on your partner or employees. So, but when you talk about employees, really they're looking for those funeral licensed funeral directors and embalmers that work for you. And we found that it's best to only list those that are full time. You know, like you might have full time, especially if they're on your website. You don't want to list any contractors or part timers. I know that there are funeral homes out there that work that way, that they have certain funeral directors that they can call that are on call, but you don't have to worry about those. It's really the owner, the full-time funeral director, right? The fewer that you put in there, the better. And that's because this is going to really reduce the time that it takes to get your local service ad turned on, right? We've been trying different things, and honestly, Google has not complained or been upset. And it turns out that if you can at least, you know, get yourself on there as the owner, and if you have a partner, you can get both of you on there, show the licenses, background checks, and all that. That's pretty much they will show that everything, well, you will show that everything is legit. And once you're approved, this usually takes about a week to 4 weeks, depending on, you know, whether you submitted all the documents, how busy they are in the background process. But once you're approved, you'll be notified. And that's it. And then at that point, you set your budget. And every time a call comes in, you know, you're paying per lead. And that's the basics of how it works. Now, prices, as far as what will you be paying for a lead, this is really where at this point in time, this webinar is taking place in August of 2024, and we are seeing prices range from $25 to $100 per lead. Now, again, this is going to be a little bit less for, say, like cremation than it is for traditional services. And what we've also noticed is that this does vary in certain parts of the country. There are parts of the country that see more traditional services and others that see more like affordable direct cremation, right? So that is going to affect the difference in the what you're paying per call. And you know, the good thing is that you do have the ability to add a little extra budget. So if the average is $35, right? Say that that's the automatic bid, you could say, listen, I'll pay an extra 25% and potentially give yourself that competitive advantage. You know, so when you're setting it up, it's going to ask you, you know, let's set the right bid or let's manually set the bid. And you can manually set the bid and then add the custom increase to get a little bit more. So if you're feeling like you're willing to pay $40 per lead versus $35, you can put that much in. And what you should know is that once your budget is spent for that particular day, you come out of the rotation. And so you want to be thinking about, do we have enough budget so that we can remain in the rotation so that we can get the lead flow that we really want? Now, the one thing I'm going to say is that you know, what we've seen is that on average, the cost per lead is less than for those who are running Google ads. So if you're running traditional Google ads, Google sponsored ads, you'll probably pay less per lead by running Google service ads, which is absolutely crazy because Google local service ads shows up at the very top of the page. So this really is a great deal. And if you've got a large amount of budget allocated to Google ads, it might be in your best interest to say, let's prioritize Google local service ads because our cost per lead is going to be lower. The quality is probably even going to be better because, you know, they're clicking on that ad and they're choosing to contact you specifically because of your profile. So there are cases where you may not want to do this. For example, in cases that we've dealt with where it comes to proximity, but we'll jump a little bit more into that. But really, for the most part, It's also, I'm also not telling you to put all your eggs on one basket and put all your spend into local service ads, but you may want to put more money into local service ads and reduce your Google ad spend. The budget that you're going to set is going to tell basically how many leads you'll get. So, for example, if you want 2 leads per day, that's going to spread out throughout the week. So you might have some days where you might be getting more than the 2 leads, and then other days where you're not getting any or you're getting less. You know, we recommend that you open up that budget as much as you can. That way you're not leaving any opportunity on the table. Remember that as of now, you have the ability to dispute leads if they come in and they're not valid. Although we do know that there are rumors that that option may be going away and Google may be reviewing the leads themselves and giving you credits for leads that are not valid just on their side. Now, if you look at the local service ads terms of service and how it's set up, there are certain leads we don't have to pay for. Okay. So you have people who are calling about a service that's not offered. You guys are a funeral home and someone's asking for ice cream. You won't have to pay for that. People calling and asking if you're accepting an apprenticeship, you don't really have to pay for that either. Or if you have a casket company contacting you, you don't have to pay for that, right? These are solicitors you don't have to pay for. But the important thing is that you're paying attention to this, right? You want someone paying attention to this because there's going to be a certain percentage of those calls that you get that are going to be from people that are that have nothing to do with being a lead. And so it's great to have someone on your team or have an organization like ours that listen to the calls and say, hey, this isn't a qualified lead. Let's go dispute that lead and let's get that taken care of. So, as I mentioned earlier, the average cost per lead is lower than Google Ads, and the quality is already typically higher. So, remember when they're calling you, they may potentially go back and call another funeral home, but that lead is going to you directly. They chose you because of your profile. You know, they saw your profile in the local service ads. They saw your reviews. They may have read them as well. So they chose you. But like with any advertising that you do, this is still there. You're still going to come across the price shoppers, right? You'll still come across the people that are calling you saying, hey, what do you charge for a cremation? That's, just based on the averages, you're going to get, that, but not predominantly. That's what we're seeing predominantly is a great ROI with these ads. Assuming that you have a great person answering the call that knows how to speak to an at-need family. So here's why I think that this is a no-brainer, right? If you run a funeral home or crematory, you're going to show up at the top of the results where your clients are looking, right? You're only going to pay on a per lead basis. So this isn't like we're just putting some budget out there. We're only paying for somebody that's actively looking in our market that is qualified and has actually, called into our office. Lower cost per lead. This has a lower cost per lead than pay per click, higher quality leads, and you've got the ability to modify the budget as you go. Now, you might be wondering, how do you get this set up? And you can set this up directly at this website, at this URL, ads.google.com/local services /sign up. And it's going to walk you through a self setup process where it asks for information about your company, and then you'll have to initiate that background process. Now, if you are already a client of Funeral Marketing Pros and this is not set up for you, and you would like to have this set up, we would be happy to do this for you. We will walk through the background process with you. This can also be if you are a funeral home that is interested in only having this service with us. This is a standalone option that we are now offering, and you can hire us to both set this up and to manage it, walk you through it as well. But if you want to do this on your own, you certainly can. So now let's talk a little bit about ranking, right? Because if you notice, there are several funeral homes that come up at that top of the page in Google. And when you have more than 3, you want to be part of that top 3 rotation. So So let's talk about, more advanced ways of getting there with LSAs. So we all know that LSAs is a great marketing strategy, right? But how does it actually work? If there were 72 other competitive funeral homes in your city, how do you actually make the top three, right? There's only three out of those 72, and there's a lot of competition. So that makes number one being difficult to achieve. So what are the factors that get you there? Number one, proximity to the actual customer's location. So depends on how close you are to the person who's actually searching for a funeral home at that moment. And Google's trying to match the closest funeral home. And then I know that in a lot of cases, this isn't relative to you, especially with direct cremation. I know of funeral homes that do direct cremation and they are willing to travel 75 miles out. However, local service ads won't work for that. And even though we would like it to, it's just the way that the algorithm works, right? So that's number one. Number two is your review score and the number of reviews that you have, mostly on your Google business profile. They're looking at your reviews. Your Google business profile reviews is something that's mission critical to your internet presence. We know that reviews are important for already ranking on Google Maps, and we know they're huge for conversion as well, right? Because someone sees you, they're going to trust you, assuming that you have, you know, a good standing, 4.8, 4.7 stars or more. That plays a big role. Whether someone's going to call you versus the competition, right? And that's going to play a big role in how confident Google is that you are the right funeral home and that they want to put you in the customer's face with that Google screened badge, right? Number three is your responsiveness to customer inquiries. Now, this is super important. This is where most funeral homes have to be cognizant that they need to be able to answer the phone 24/7 and they cannot allow calls to go to voicemail. So if you're not answering the calls with a live answer, Google is tracking that and they see what your responsiveness is. The other aspect of this is that after the call ends, it sits in the local service ads platform, like it's sitting there and they know that this customer dialed in, right? They give you the recording of the call and there's a queue where Google is waiting for you to mark the outcome. Either did you book the service? Is it scheduled? And so it's really important that your team or yourself or someone at your company is listening to those calls and ensuring that your responsiveness level is high. But you're also passing that information back to Google. So there's your feedback loop, right? Because they know that you answered the call, but they don't know if it's booked. So, or what's happening with it. So actually answering the calls and giving Google the information that they need is what's going to qualify you as a most qualified funeral home so they can continue putting more leads in front of you. And of course, it's in Google's best interest to continue to push leads to those funeral homes. So be sure that you're paying attention to the responsiveness of this. Now, a funeral home should have the ability to answer calls 24/7. If not, you're not competitive. Okay. Otherwise, if you put 24/7 and you don't have the systems and mechanisms in place to actually do that, you're probably going to be wasting money on leads that don't convert. So, you know, you need to be able to actually help that family and show Google that you are open, that you are quote unquote open or able to answer the phone. And then the other thing that's going to impact your ranking is if you've received serious or repeated complaints about your business, right? So part of the feedback loop is the customer gets a request on how things went. And it says that this is a Google guaranteed or Google screen service. And so if the family was upset and they feel that they were ripped off in any way, and they contact Google and say, hey, what kind of screening did you do? What kind of guarantee is this? This funeral home was terrible. If this happens, this is really going to negatively impact your rank. So, I think that that goes without saying. And so, then this last paragraph, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. There's basically that's high level how the ranking works, right? Now, let's get into specifics on what you want to do throughout this process to win with local service ads. So I'm going to show you this step by step, but we have to dial in the profile. And there's an actual profile that you set up after your background checks are done, where you set the service area, you set the budget, you set the types of services that you provide, and we get a button in the actual Google local service ads console, right? And that button helps us close the loop on what's happening after the service is complete. Or do we have to mark that lead as a lead that was not good, right? So we should be targeting an 85 booking ratio. Now, I'm going to show you how to look at this within the reporting so that you see what the ratio is. And I can tell you most funeral homes do not look at this. They don't even realize that there's an app that they can log into, and they don't have anybody paying attention to it. And then they wonder why they're not staying in the rotation. They wonder why they're not getting any calls from local service ads, because they're not playing the game the way that Google wants them to play it. So let's get into specifics, right? Number one is we want to dial in the profile. So after you go through the little hoops of submitting the background check, all of that, you have the dashboard that you can log into, and there's all kinds of data there. You can enter in a description of your company, photos of headshot of the owner, of the funeral directors. You should be loading all of that up. Photos of the funeral home, all of that, right? You want to make sure that the description sells why somebody should choose you versus the competition. You want to make sure that you've chosen the right categories as well. Now, you want to make sure that you've set the right schedule within the platform, right? And so, set your budget open if you have the capacity. Now, there's some potential aspect that you want to have keywords and in your service, you want to have keywords, and you want to talk about your services in your business bio, but you should also write that to be written for your customer, right? So you have to write it almost like it's a sales letter on why somebody would choose you versus the competition, the benefits of using you, and like the actual problem that they're looking to get solved. And don't just put like we're a family owned funeral home in Dallas, Texas. Really write with detailed description, like you would on your homepage, and use all and as many of the characters that Google allows you to. Now, obviously, you're going to have to select the types of services that you do. Be strategic about this, pick the right things, and make sure that they are, that they coincide with what you do, and be very specific about what services you offer. Now, when you set up your service area, there's a choice to choose, like it's like a map, a little geo grid based on cities or zip codes, depending upon your market. Like, it really depends on your market, which way you go, right? Cities or zip codes. What you don't want to do is choose both, all the zip codes and all the cities, because that passes confusing signals to Google. And so choose either. We're going to select the cities that we operate in, and that really is the preferred method. Or we're going to put in the specific zip codes that we know we want to do business in. And so we want to set that service area up right. Now, if you don't have the area selected, Google's not going to have you in the rotation. So you wouldn't get any calls and leads in that area. And then you want to add photos that, Google gives you the option to add pictures of your team. Now, there's two things on the photos. Number one is I encourage you to use personality-based imagery, just like, I would suggest that for your website, right? People want to do business with people, right? Not only people, but people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. So real people, and they want to be able to see their faces. So use real, authentic images of your team, your funeral directors, if you have more funeral directors or embalmers as well. Now, the other important thing with photos is make sure that no phone numbers show up in the photos. Like if you're standing in front, if there's a sign, if there's a phone number, make sure that you don't have that. If there's a billboard, you don't want that there, because that's going to get flagged and the image is going to come down, and then they might flag your listing. So just pay attention to not using any phone numbers in the images. Okay. Now, so, number two, mark your jobs as booked. So, that's what we're going to do when we set up the profile, right? Lots of details, right? So, that's where it makes sense to have somebody that knows what the details are, that can help make sure that it's either set up correctly or optimized. Like, there's no reason you can't go in after the profile is set up and make it better. You can really just dial it in with a description, pictures, so select the services. But number two, so once a profile is up and running, we've set our budget, we've got everything humming along. Number two is we have to mark the appointments complete. Most funeral homes have this running, and it's just the phone calls come in and nobody's going into the mobile app or the desktop profile in the back end and pulling up that call and marking the outcome. One of the simplest things that you can do to give yourself a leg up is to assign that to somebody at your funeral home, or let a company like ours listen to those calls and mark those outcomes. We will tell you if you're not answering correctly, if things aren't going well, if the conversation has a negative impact. But, really, it's going to negatively impact Google wanting to send you more calls if you don't mark this. So then you'll fall out of the top three. Now, we'll be paying attention to all of that, but we'll also mark the outcome. That was a qualified lead, that was booked, etc. Now, that closed loop process gives Google more and more confidence that you are the right funeral home, and we want to mark those jobs as booked. So Google's going to rate you by the responsiveness that you mark as booked, as scheduled. Add the customer details if you can. You want to add their phone. You want to add, well, they have their phone, but you want to add their name, their email address. You want to have all of that in there. Possibly you might want to push a review request to them after a service is done. There's going to be people that obviously call in that you're not going to convert. You're not going to have 100% conversion rate from lead to book, but we don't want to have just an open loop, like piled up with all these uncovered opportunities. You should really mark them as booked, or eventually be marked as not converted or archived, right? And of course, we also want to dispute the unqualified call, or the unqualified lead. So that's number three. We've got the profile set up. We're making our, services, and we're marking the outcomes of the ones we've got. Number three is we need to deal with the disputes. And we usually find that there's at least a 10% dispute ratio for leads that you get. There's always going to be a solicitor that called you, etc. But you want to pay attention to this, because, you want to make sure that you don't have any missed opportunities also to get a refund, or on those calls that you're being charged for. So deal with the disputes for sure, so that you won't be charged for the disqualified calls. Someone may have called you from another city that you don't service, or they may be asking for a service that you don't provide, right? Okay, number four, and in order to really improve your probability of remaining relevant in local service ads, it's going to be to drive verified reviews, or even just reviews, right? So there are two types of reviews at this moment. There's the review that somebody, goes into your Google profile and the Google map listing, and they write a review. It's like a regular review. And there's a verified review. Now, verified review means that this is when they booked a service through the local service ads, right? That's when the call originally came in, and it gets pinned to your dashboard. And then they go in and you requested a review through the platform, and then that will drive reviews that are verified, right? Obviously, if you provide great service, that's a leverage that you have that Google will see. And this is for the meantime, like, you can try to push this we've been A/B testing whether or not this works, and we don't see whether or not it's very hard to tell so far, but still, because it's a signal that is a loopback signal sent directly back to Google, it's something that it's preferable to do. There are talks about this going away and saying that everything will be merged with your Google business profile, but for now, you have this option, you should use it. Okay, and number 5 is you wanna target an 85% booking rate, and so inside of the dashboard and Google Business Profile, inside of your local service ads, there's an area called Reports, and within Reports, assuming you're getting leads and assuming you're making the outcomes, it's gonna have a little area at the top that shows that your conversion rate and kind of what your booking rate is. So, here we go. You wanna make sure that you're at 85% or higher. Now that would be amazing, right? But at least 50% ideally, let's shoot if you're not there yet, shoot for 50%, and of those that are not that are qualified leads, right? And that you're actually showing that booked into the system. I think that this passes a really healthy feedback loop to Google. And so we want to understand how the reporting works and then how effectively you can convert those calls into clients. Remember, again, we're shooting for 85%, and what you measure gets done, and what you measure gets done and always improves. So you or somebody should be looking at this at least once a week. How many of these do we get? How many reviews are requested? How many of these did we actually mark as completed? And what's the booking ratio? And if it's low, why is that, right? Is it that we don't have jobs? Are we not following up? What's happening there? So keep that in mind. So the other question I want to talk a little bit about is how you increase lead flow, because sometimes what we've seen is there is an account that's churned that's burning and it's getting calls, and all of a sudden it stops, right? So what happens? And what we recommend that you do is just a couple of things here. First thing, maybe to play with the budget, right? Uh, and sometimes you would have to really keep an eye on this, but if you have, say, a $4,000 per month budget, bump it to 8. Basically, it seems like perhaps these signals show some type of activity to Google, but you will have to keep an eye on your spend, right? If you do that. The other thing is the location. You might have to expand the service area. Now, Google will typically only give you about 10 miles, sometimes 15 miles as a service area. But still, if you expand that service area, you're showing Google another signal of activity. And sometimes they somehow kind of reset your account. And then just, make sure that you also have every lead marked, right? Is it booked? Is it scheduled? Is it archived? You're getting reviews. Again, your Google business profile is active. It's connected to your local service ad. So it's important that they see activity there as well. So just having consistency with that and being on top of it on a very consistent basis, I think that usually helps to start to turn things back on. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining me here. I hope that you found this productive. I hope that you found it helpful. If you need any help, feel free to drop a comment below. And what I'd also like to do is invite you to have a call with me. This is a call where we offer you a free marketing audit. Feel free to scan that QR code there to be brought to our calendar, or head on over to our website at funeralmarketingpros.com and schedule a call. Thank you.